Okay, we are live, but we have an updated link. So I just need to update the link to everyone and put that into the website. So everybody needs to change. Okay, we are live, but we have an updated link. So I just need to update the link to everyone and I need to mute YouTube. That's what I realized. Okay, guys, any second now. We are only 8 minutes late, so that's already happening. Okay, you see the live stream? No, I mean, not here, I'm sorry. You guys, no, yes. Pages. You guys see that we are editing this on the spot, right? Watch on YouTube. We are editing the link and we are publishing it. And if you just tell everyone to go back to martians.sg/live and click on the link, you should see it, hopefully. And refresh your browser maybe. Yep, it works. Fantastic. Okay, here we go. And if we just, you know what, if somebody just goes to that other chat and just on YouTube and pastes in the new URL. All right. Okay, guys, let's start. I will just watch the incoming requests for people to join us, and let's kick this off. Okay, so we are coming live. I'm changing the title slide. This is YouTube, right? No? This is Zoom. Okay, guys, only 9 minutes late. This is actually not terrible. And we are starting now. Guys, I wish you could see what I see. I see a room full of people who are part of an incredible mission. A mission to Mars, I guess, but it's a very different story, which we will share with you in a moment. I will just stand up and take a photo for my memory. So we are all physically in Singapore over here in 61 Robinson Road, and Pauline from Strategic Digital Labs was kind enough to offer us the room. We have a room full of presenters. You will see me sitting here right now. Actually, you don't see me. Okay, now you see me. So the person who's going to present is going to sit at this spot, and you should probably also see a room full of cameras and pizzas and drinks and everything, right? So let's start. What do we want to talk about? The Martians, right? What's the Martians about? Not too long ago, actually, it's a few people here in Singapore, including myself, including Annie and Alin and a few others. We started. I will say I sometimes introduce it as a digital support group for digital natives. So it's people like me. We have conference calls at midnight, at 6 o'clock in the morning, and well. The question is, how do you stay productive during the day? Or who is your lunch buddy, right? So it's difficult. There is Netflix, there is all kinds of distractions at home. It's not that easy, right? So even though I'm a geek, I thought we have to resist this temptation just to build another app, just to build another portal, because that doesn't solve anything. We want to be creating experiences in the real world, right? And I met this wonderful person, Annie, which you will hear later. And together we brought this to life. We are meeting face to face. So it sounds crazy, but we are actually putting up at cafes, at co-working spaces, who are already starting to give us discounts, right? If you are one of these people, right, where you are across the world in your head, but you're physically in Singapore, put up with us. The next one is February 26th, next week already, right? And if you are in any other parts of the world, talk with us and we will replicate the story in Thailand, in Japan, and wherever, because it's all about helping each other, right? So there is a bit of chit chat, and we also have lunch together. But most of all, it's actually bringing your laptop, getting stuff done, and occasionally, asking your neighbor and colleague, and can you help me look at this real quick? Does it make sense? Right. So we help each other and inspire one another. The term Martians. I mean, many people came to us and said, "Hey, we like the logo, we like the artwork, but why Martians?" Right? And it's that thing, we watched that NASA TED talk where you have people who work for NASA who are physically on Earth, but they operate on Mars time, which means every day, well, on Mars the day is 24 hours and 40 minutes. Every day your shift ends a little later, and at some point you are in San Francisco, 3 a.m. at night, and you want to have dinner. So that's how we came up with that name, right? Because I think it's very similar. We are different in a way, right? So we operate in different time zones in our heads. We work on teams that are spread all across the globe, and in many cases, across locations, across organizations, right? Because everything is so tangled up together. Martians are communicators and facilitators, and we know that they are actually quickly able to adapt to change, and they also know how to have fun. Yeah, and we actually think in today's world, these are attributes that people should look at. This is necessary, and so in this context, I mean, we are absolutely not for profit, right? So we are all here on someone else's payroll, doing this for the benefit of people. Closer to the mic. Okay, I'm coming closer to the mic. Maybe I should put up the gear as well. Let me try this real quick. Okay, maybe it's a little louder now. Right, so it's all about bringing these values to people, and we actually thought we give something back to the community and talk to you about these topics. My name is Uli. I'm a catalyst at Axway, and when people ask me what's a catalyst, there is multiple answers, but you can say it's a corporate therapist. So we help organizations make good decisions. You can ask me about many things, and I hope you stalk me on LinkedIn and look me up there. We can talk about corporate innovation. I'm extremely passionate about collaboration across departments and organizations. And as you can probably tell, I like meetups and I like events. The world has changed, and it's not just since a few weeks. The world has changed since a long time, right? And I mean, about this slide, I could talk for 2 hours, right? And I had this in one of my sessions last week where I showed this slide and say, in the old days, things were pretty simple. You have a radio, it works or it doesn't. And if it's broken, they replace it or you have to buy a new one, right? But today, when I sit on the balcony and the music stops, it could be Bluetooth. It could be Spotify itself. It could be my phone. It could be the Wi-Fi. It could be the speaker. It's a murder mystery game. Also, on one hand, it's full of opportunity, right? Because you can be a kid in university and put it on the cloud, and you can make a lot of money. You don't have to build physical devices. You can ship this out, and you're famous, right? On the other hand, if something breaks, and that is my Spotify example, if something breaks, then yeah, it's quite tricky to figure out who is the culprit. And in many cases, you don't have control over these bits, right? Which on the bigger picture also brings us to how do we engineer some of these large systems that everybody wants to have, right? And that also means we need to collaborate a lot more. And specifically with the coronavirus situation, this is even more evident that we can't do this alone, right? We can't fight that problem alone. And when everybody is asked to work from home, yeah, how are we supposed to do this? So this is where the Martians hopefully have a story to tell, right? Everything is connected, right? there is so many things that we could talk about. For me, it's very much about, let's realize that we are not able to be individual fighters. We need to be connected. So that means transparency. That means openness. It means letting go of some of the old things that just don't work anymore. And let's look at the new way. For techies, open source is a very familiar concept, so it's something along the line. And the only slide that I have for you from my end is this one, right? So I'm a geek, I'm a technologist, and I'm extremely excited about some of the technical bits that we can do. I mean, look at what we are able to put up today with, we got the live stream working, right? Buying technology is important, right? And it's the enabler. Without technology, we wouldn't be able to have this meeting across APAC, or I've even seen people from the US dialing in at this time. This is incredible. So this is an enabler, and it's extremely necessary. The problem is that many people always try to throw technology at problems that need to be solved on a different level. And that is processes, which, again, if we take the Spotify example, if Facebook changes the way they are, and this is a technical term, if Facebook changes the way their APIs work, right, they will not call you up and say, in 2 weeks, we are going to change our interface. You've got to be able to react really, really fast. Otherwise, you'll have a problem. The biggest thing is about values and culture, right? And this is about empowering employees, making sure there is trust, there is openness. This is not something you can switch on from today to tomorrow, but there is little things you can do to build on to what you have started. This is really all from my end, because again, we want to give you a few bites. We want to introduce you to the team, actually. And in most cases, I will say our communication channels are open. We all have busy work lives and personal things going on, but if there is a reason for us to get in touch, and if you think you want help with something, do reach out. We mean it. It's hello@martians.sg. Yes, so let me pass you over to a wonderful person. Her name is Annie, and that's enough from me for the time being.
Thank you very much.
This is yours.
Hi, everyone. I see about 44 people in this meeting. So for those of you who joined a bit later, welcome. My name is Annie. I'm one of the co-organizers of the Martians together with Uli. And I'm also the founder of a company, a startup called PeraPera. You can visit us at perapera.ai. It's a language learning startup targeted at working professionals. So we try to teach people who are working to equip themselves with language skills that are needed to develop further in their careers. So apart from being a founder, what I would like to share today is actually something about remote working. My team is 5 people, and we're located right now in Singapore, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. So even though I think we are fortunate in that we all operate in the same time zone, we're actually in different places. We don't have an office, so we're all operating, working from home essentially. And what inspired me to set up this session today is that we've been seeing a lot of people where they used to work in the office, and because of the virus situation right now, have started working from home, or are basically forced to not go into the office. Some of them are quarantined, some of them have come into contact with people who have the virus. And so a lot of people are now working from home. And it's actually something that takes some time to adjust to. And so today, I would like to share my experience working from home as someone who has come from a background of working in an office. So if you have worked in an office before, then this picture would be very familiar to you. So office cubicles, right? There's meeting spaces where people can get together. They can discuss things. And what I am doing right now, and maybe some of you are as well, is something that looks more like this. So these are actual pictures of my home office. I don't have a very elaborate setup, right? It's just a desk, right? A chair, proper lighting, and my computer, and obviously, some equipment like earphones and things like that. So you'll be working right now, maybe perhaps from home, or maybe from cafes. And the picture on the right is a picture of the Martians at one of our productive days. So we have like productive days where we meet in the cafe. Everyone's working on their own project, but basically we like to be in the same place so that we can bounce off ideas with each other, talk to people who sometimes are from different backgrounds, different industries, and then come up with new ideas. So today I would like to share two things to get you started working remotely. So the first is actually tools that you need. So some of you may be very experienced remote workers, so some of this might be quite repetitive, in which case, would definitely welcome you to share if there's any tools that you find better than the ones I'm sharing. Would love to have a discussion about that. This slide is just kind of a summary of the tools that my company, we are using right now. So we have some collaboration tools. There's Dropbox Paper. There is Google Suite for like if you need spreadsheets, if you need if you need basic like document functions, if you need to create slides, and it's all in the cloud. You can share it very easily with your team. We use Slack probably the most of all, and that's an instant messaging tool. So I think what it allows us is to kind of stay connected, to share ideas with each other in a way that's maybe a bit more immediate than email. So we do use that a lot. Zoom probably requires no introduction. It's the video conferencing tool that we're using right now. So when I have meetings with my team remotely, I like to see their faces. I like to see the expressions. I need to know whether they're confused or about any of the instructions or any of the things that we're discussing. So Zoom is very helpful in that respect. Other tools that you might want to experiment with are project management tools. There's Trello. Again, this is probably something a lot of people use. In terms of workflow or notification integration, we do use tools like Zapier, if this and that. And for other things like, simple things that you don't really think about so much when you're all in the same place, right? Like password management. Maybe this is the time to start experimenting with some tools like that. And obviously for scheduling, you have like just Google Calendar. I think when you're working remotely, it's very important to have keep your calendar clean and up to date so that people know, when you're available. Always keep a lot of communication channels open so that you can be accessible to the rest of your team. We do actually use a lot of tools, and that is something that my co-founder is the technical co-founder. I'm the business co-founder. And he uses a lot of tools to make sure that everything is, we're all productive and working well together. This is just an article that we have on LinkedIn. If any of you are interested, you can check this out. It gives you it's basically like a longer version of my previous slide, which tells you what tools are good for different purposes. So yeah, if you're interested, do check this out. The second thing I would like to talk about before I hand time over to someone else is actually the mindset that you require to not only survive working remotely, but also to thrive working remotely. And that is, I would say, as important as the tools that you have, because it's a time where, if nothing on the previous slide looked familiar to you, then obviously there's a lot of the learning curve is going to be pretty steep. And having a good mindset and knowing what's going to be different about working remotely from working in an office would be very helpful to help you succeed, not just working from home, but from anywhere, essentially. So this is this is a picture of one of the founder of a company called Wolfram. As you can see, very elaborate home office setup. So obviously, he's being very productive, and this is something we want to become, as opposed to this, which from speaking to a lot of people now is one of their biggest concerns, right? How do I, how do I stay focused? How do I avoid distractions? And how do I just not become a person who just wakes up late every day, right? Instead of working on what I'm supposed to be working on. And I think this is a very real problem because we associate being at home with being very free, being relaxed. And sometimes when you have to work from home and actually be productive, it can be a bit at odds with your expectation of what it's like to be in a certain environment, right? So in terms of the mindset that you should have, some suggestions perhaps that I would offer are firstly, to the extent possible, depends on your organization, obviously, but to discover your own momentum. And you'll realize, especially when you start working from home and having more freedom, that you generally, that there are certain times in the day you gravitate to in terms of being productive. And it's like that for one person, and for another team member, it might be completely different. So I think working remotely is actually a good chance for organizations to move more towards something that's not FaceTime and dependent on how often you see each other, but more results driven in a way where you share the results of what you've been working off, and so discover your own momentum. You have to figure this out slowly, like what times of the day you're productive and what times you would rather be taking a break. And also respect that others will have different schedules from your own. So I think it means that certain things will take a longer time to accomplish than if you were all in the office. But in the long run, I think it's actually a type of schedule that is sustainable for every single individual. And if there's trust within the team, within the organization, then it could lead to everyone having more productive and also more kind of satisfying professional lives. The second is to seek out opportunities for doing things together with your colleagues or team members. So the picture you see here is actually just a snapshot from my own schedule. I like to keep my schedule pretty open. This doesn't mean that these are all the meetings I have in a week, but you can see, for example, every Friday, our team actually has a lunch and learn series. So for 1 hour, we are actually all just eating our lunch in front of our computers. And we watch something together. So we're learning together. After we watch it, we're discussing, we're discussing what we found interesting. And not only that, I think in our regular meetings, we try to encourage people to kind of talk a bit about what's going on in their lives as well. Because I think people have to realize that when you're in an office, maybe you see each other a lot more often, and you kind of know what's been going on in other people's lives. But when you're remote, I think it's important to take the time to actually just catch up, right? Just talk about, just have like chit chat, just talk a bit about getting updates on each other before you actually start getting into business. I think that's always very useful. So apart from the meetings you see here, I also like to reach out to people in the team individually. We have like small co-working sessions, right? Where maybe we're silent a lot of the time, but we're actually, doing work together, and we'll be like, like we'll share like a bit of our thought process behind doing certain things and making certain decisions. And that actually helps us to stay connected as a team. And the last and perhaps most important thing, I think, is to be patient, not just with yourself, but also with other people. I think there is a lot of, it is difficult to adjust to working remotely if you're doing it for the first time. You might be, you might be really motivated on the first day. You'd be like, oh, I'm going to wake up at 8:30, or I'm going to have my breakfast at 9. I'm going to like do this, and then I'll have this. And then, you plan everything. And then maybe you realize that it's not working out very well. And after a while, it's easy to get into a cycle where, you think something's not working, and then you stop, doing other things. And then it's kind of like a downward spiral. So I think it's important to realize that things are really not going to go according to plan when you first start to do remote work. And then it's important to be patient with yourself. And sometimes it's just a process of understanding yourself better, which times of the day you're actually productive, which time do you actually think that is suitable to do different sorts of works, right? Including your meetings, or including more independent work. So it's a good time to kind of revisit all these things, learn more about yourself, and just if it's your first time doing remote work, then definitely good luck, and do reach out to myself or any of the people on this call if you need any more advice or help with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Who's next? Okay, pretty awesome. Thanks, Annie. Let's see who we have next. Oh yes, a certain Raymond.
Let's get you over here.
Okay, hello everyone.
Hi.
I'm Raymond. Okay, I'm in transition right now. So I used to head the innovation center or the innovation practice in Deloitte for Southeast Asia. I've also been the practice lead for the future of work and digital transformation at IDC. So a couple of topics I would like to engage you with everyone here is, with the current effects or impacts from the virus in Asia, we have moved into a phase where we will look at, say, BCP, business continuity planning, and management itself. A couple of things to take note is that although this is not new, we have been through various events in the past, like SARS, MERS, H5N1. There's so many instances where we have gone through this process, but the unique part about this particular incident is it's impacting the factory of the world. Manufacturing is being impacted, and therefore it's no longer just a white collar BCP management issue. Now has gone to include another blue collar space. With manufacturing being impacted, what happens? So I will go into the basic introduction of what BCP is. I'm not going to go in depth, partially because this will take hours or days from a management consulting perspective.
Oh, sure, let me just have, no problem. Should be this one.
Okay. Just to put in the context, as with many countries in Singapore and Asia and around the world, we have, or they have actually activated their own extensive BCP or BCM processes. So the lessons learned from SARS and the MERS outbreaks are cases where they will bring them out of their cold storage if they've not been practicing it, or if they've not been repackaged or re-looked at in the past. A couple of things to take note. Singapore is kind of unique. It's, I think, the highest with Japan at 85 outbreaks currently. Partially because Singapore is a main air hub as well as a seaport. So there's a lot of transient trade as well as people going through Singapore. So the measures to include or have been implemented are remote working arrangements, personal protection provided by the government as well as organizations themselves. So what we need to take note about is, in Singapore's context, a lot of effort, a lot of initiative has been done, but we are always aware that it could be worse, it could get worse. Sorry. It could be worse and it could get worse if it's not tackled efficiently. Okay, so part of BCP plan is to look at three things. That means your current state itself. Where are you in relation to what is the issue on hand? Is there a business impact? So the BIA is where you look at what kind of impacts will cause a disruption in either your organization, the factories, the people, the processes, even your IT systems. And then you do a threat and risk assessment. So what are the threats? It's like a SWOT analysis that you do in management. So like a SWOT analysis, you look at the threats and then the risk assessments, and then measure it and put weights on it. All of these three assessments will hopefully formulate your 5 plans. All right, so your business resumption plan, your occupant emergency plan, your continuity of operations plan, incident management plan, disaster recovery plan. Point 1. For some organizations, if say in the banking or finance industry or predominant knowledge working industries, it's quite easy to restart your business once the virus has actually toned down or the opportunity to actually restart your business is available. For factories, you need to stagger your production startups. It's not so instantaneous where you just, the next day everyone reports to work and the factory operation runs. You have supply chain management issues. You have, in certain cases, you're not able to start up all your machines at one go because it's a production line. So you need to plan for that from a business resumption issue. Occupant emergency plan would be, if in Singapore's case, we go to a code red, we will split probably 50-50, where perhaps 50% of the staff can be in the office, 50% of the staff will work from home, some form of ratio. So for what, like I said, banking finance, you might be able to say everyone reports to work first week of next week, all right? Everyone just reports to work, but you might want to stagger the sudden influx of everyone coming back from work at the same time, stagger into maybe 2 or 3 groups. So how do you plan to go about doing that as one? Like say on the factory shop floor, it's the same thing. If it's a production line, you might want the first portion of your production line to commence first, then stagger subsequent machines or subsequent steps in your factory itself. So this is how you will plan it. Continuity of operations. So this is another issue where some companies invested in remote working, co-working spaces, or they have operations that are diversified enough for them to actually manage, I would say, the current issues that we have right now. Incident management plan is, okay, back to what is this incident? How do we assess the incident? How do we rate the incident? How do we go about inputting whatever knowledge we gain from all the previous incidents in the past, say SARS or MERS? How do we continue that into the next process? Because if you look at the past incidents, it's about 5 to 10 years apart. So you have a kind of a 5-year gap, which you could actually repackage, relook at your current processes. Your disaster recovery plan. I did a project once for, I would say, a French company. And what happened was during the in Japan itself, when we had the tsunami, it cut off all connectivity itself. So a lot of management in France were trying to figure out whether their staff in Japan were impacted. So there was no way of communicating there. There were no plans in place that took care of that group that's actually based in Japan or working through the Japan office. So that caused an incident where management was saying, what do we have? Alternative forms, alternative methods to do recovery of our employees, our staff, our processes, our documents, our files. How do we go about pulling those kind of assets back or consolidating them? Those were the days pre-cloud, pre-software as a service. So there were issues then that would be less relevant today, but the knowledge gained from that tsunami incident helped them shape what they will be for the disaster recovery plan going forward. Okay, the benefits of drafting a disaster recovery plan. Just to keep it simple, it provides everyone with a sense of security, meaning that you are assured it's an insurance policy that you put in place through effort and time doing your research, doing your structuring, doing your frameworks, doing your testing itself. Hopefully, it also minimizes the risk of delays. So delays could be, how do you inform your staff? How do you inform your partners as well as your business vendors, etc., and even your customers? Should there be disruption in any of your processes, in any of your key milestones or key points in your business itself? How do you minimize those delays? How do you inform them? The third point would be reliability of standby systems. So you look, this is more on the IT standpoint. If you've not been tested before, how do you shift, say, hundreds or thousands of workers from working in an office environment to going on the cloud or working from home? So you need to test certain things. One of them would be, of course, your connectivity issues. Not every employee might have internet at home or internet services at home, so probably they're working off their mobile devices or tablets. So is that going to be an issue? Are their subscription plans catered to allow them to claim for data connectivity should they be working offsite or from home? So what are your standby systems in place? The fourth one is it needs to be tested. Every standard, every framework, every design, you have to test it for possibilities of issues or errors. Whether you covered all your bases, that's the idea. So testing the plan, it could be small, it could be a large test plan. You see that probably in an example would be your fire drills in your office. So everyone moves down, we test that. Whether we can move enough people down fast enough, and we take standards. The fifth one will be, of course, decision making during a disaster. Who makes the calls? Back to the example of the French client that I had for Japan, I made the decision call to trigger out the telcos themselves have a how should I say? The telcos themselves have an insurance policy where should any of the fiber cables get cut, we fire up satellite comms. The idea is satellite comms is expensive, but it's not meant to push data. It's meant to provide connectivity from a ground-based station to the satellites to the nearest ground-based station, and hopefully get some connectivity or voice calls through. So that was my decision call. Because I was authorized to do it, I am the risk profile manager for that period of time, and my response time was 30 minutes because I kind of stayed next to the office. Yeah, so I'm the one that the systems will track. All my phones and my computers were flag red, and then I'll just cross over, and then I'll take the initiative and make the decision call. Later on, I had to explain doing why I did it, but thankfully the clients and the customers who appreciated the effort of trying to help them connect with their staff as well as their family members were there, wrote very good reviews on my ability to respond fast. So that kind of saved my explanation to senior management why I triggered that particular insurance policy. The sixth point is we have to look at legal liability. So different countries around the world have different work policies as well as system policies in place. So we need to take that into consideration. The last one is, of course, like Eddie has said, the mindset is that some people are very comfortable with working in an office environment where they meet their colleagues, where all the information is located in the office. Some people find it stressful to work from home because they have family commitments, or the home environment was never built, or they have no area for them to actually do productive work at home. So that is sometimes a stressful environment for them. And how could we alleviate that? So some companies actually took the prerogative and ran co-working spaces or small workspaces where people could actually continue to work, but on a remote standpoint. This slide gives a very high-level example of some of the BCP shortfalls that were discovered. So a high priority, more than 60% actually discovered that there were so many errors in the plan because it's never been tested. And another 50% found that plans were not up to date. It never catered for all the possible incidences or possible scenarios. So this is where people need to actually take an effort to relook at their plans, all right? Rebuild areas where technology has moved on and their plans were still 5 years back. So things like I said, cloud services, backup services, security services for mobile, tablets, work remote from home, VPN. So all this needs to be updated with the latest policies. There's also another group in the third point, unable to find passwords. Working from office, working from home sometimes causes an issue. I've encountered that as well. So when you plug into your network in office, everything, you can access it without even, say, keying in your password, other than the device password that you need to log on. But once you work from home, some people forget that there are specific passwords for specific storage spaces or specific tools when you work from home. So some people forget the passwords and they trigger the IT department, and the IT department gets flooded with all these calls and support issues. All right, the next one is insufficient backup power, which would be more on the data center side. It's planned and unplanned, so resources will be an issue. Communication is not in place. This brings back to the point where how do you deliver sufficient communication with your employees as well as your customers and maybe your partners and vendors. Personnel not trained into BCP, working from home, accessing tools. What is the actual policy for doing certain issues when you have a BCP program or you're working from home? Third one, as I said, third last one will be system priorities not identified. So what areas would IT need to trigger in order for BCP to work? All right. Subsequently, the plan not documented. People do not know what they need to do. So a good point with the mobile applications we have today is you could build, say, a HR policy app with a BCP plan inside. So when you trigger it, all the staff will actually know what's the next step, what they need to do, how they can go about executing things that were otherwise not covered. So it also refreshes them through the mobile app. The last one, of course, the last 10% is event not identified. So this particular virus event is, some of them are not identified because it impacts manufacturing.
Yeah, go ahead.
It impacts manufacturing, and where do you find alternate sources for your manufacturing of your products when China is the factory of the world? So this was not probably catered for. So these are the issues that have cropped up, and people have noticed it, and they are working on it to amend it. Just to share with, this is just a high level slide. It tells you how to reiterate what was spoken. Point one is, of course, to assess your risk and then share the results with all the business stakeholders, IT department, HR, the risk team, legal, etc. So everyone needs to get involved and help build that collateral itself. The next one, to how do you strategize the risk? Put it onto maybe weights, what is critical, what's not critical. And that also impacts your people and resources. So you could stagger the disruption by letting some frontline folks work from home first, and then slowly you work your back-end people bit by bit, all right? The third is to invest. So investment in technology, services, and solutions will always be critical. You neglect any portion of it, the disruption will manifest itself when working from home, right? An example was, of course, the mobile plans and policies in place. How do you secure devices that will otherwise be secured in your office network, but now you're working from home, where perhaps the home network is not as secure, or there are other computers in that home network that have viruses. Okay?
There's a question online about what is DRP? Not on your chat, but you mentioned DRP earlier.
Okay, disaster recovery plan. Okay. Sorry. So where was I? Okay, fourth. Everyone needs to educate. Everyone needs to be educated on what is the BCM, the management, and the BCP, the policy itself. All right. So that helps to shape the understanding of what can be done, what cannot be done in the overall scope of the incident. And of course, back to point 5, the last way you measure it. Was it effective? Could more be done? And then put it back in the system and feedback again. So this is the constant feedback loop. All right, this is a takeaway slide. Most of you could see it. I won't read it word for word. So part 1 is, of course, to prepare. Part 2 is to take action. So part 1 preparation is in this case, what is the overview of the coronavirus? The difference between SARS and MERS. So you take that into consideration. The second point, of course, is discuss the key differences and similarities with your BCP folks. All right, so have a pandemic response plan. Have people who look at this from a high level management perspective, as well as from middle management, and then down the value chain itself in your organization. Like I said in my previous slide, next point, to determine the critical business functions or processes to be protected. All right, so you stagger your disconnect from your office environment to your home, for example, or working from a remote site. You assess what critical functions could be shall we say, decreased or improved on. Fourth point, discuss the possible pandemic response strategies. So different pandemic response strategies, it could be from the influenza, it could be for the Ebola, or it could be another possibility is what we have right now. So different response strategies, you do not have one generic one that cuts across the board. And of course, prepare the response plan. Who's going to announce it? How will you address it? How will you explain it to people who use social media to get in touch with you, right? So you need to have that response plan in place. And part 2, the action points. So determine the activation procedures. So you need to have key people who make decision calls along the way, so that elevates your senior management or middle managers to execute whatever plans are there. So you advise people, or you authorize people in positions that are in IT, risk advisory, HR, or even in sales, for example. How do they go about executing those decisions? All right. Next point is establish the communication protocols, what channels, what procedures. This is elaborated. I elaborated in the earlier points. The third one, discuss policies, precautionary measures to take. So, like I said, keep everyone informed. Be open, be transparent in what is happening, and explain it along the way.
Keep talking.
And second last is, of course, get into action. So you must always test your plan. There's no point planning for something you never tested it. That's why it goes back to the earlier slide with the graph where 60% of them failed because the plan was never tested. And then back to key success factors. What was done successfully, what was done less successfully, and what actually failed. Then put it back into the system itself, and then from there, hopefully the next response, the next BCP or next BCP planning will take away a good chunk of those issues. All right, I believe that's my last slide. Thank you everyone for your time. If anyone has any issues regarding BCP or BCM considerations and would like to explore further, you can reach out to me or Yuli, and then we'll get in touch. As I would like to reiterate that this current incident is very unique in the sense that it impacts a lot of, I would say, management as well as white collar as well as blue collar folks, manufacturing industry, transport, tourism. So everyone just take care of yourselves and be prepared and wash your hands. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay, guys, I was checking my messages. We have a few more sessions to go, and it's not even 3 o'clock yet. Just wanted to make sure the people who joined us late, and you might have seen, I keep letting people in, right? Yes, we will make the recording available later. Yes, you will have the chance to ask questions. That should be happening after the last presentation. And of course, we will have the slides available on martians.sg. And with this, let's go to our next awesome speaker, which is this person over here.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. So my name is Alan, and I am a people success consultant. I work for Up Advisory, and Up Advisory is a boutique HR consulting firm. We work with our clients to, we design, implement, and broker HR solutions for our clients. So that's what we do. And I work in the areas of talent development, high performance, culture, digital HR, and employee engagement. If you would like to get in touch with me, check out my LinkedIn profile and we can chat. So today, for the topic today, what I'm going to talk to you is about how does HR function support business in uncertain times. And we've had a few speakers already. We're talking about what needs to happen from a business continuity perspective. And now what you will see, what I hope to share with you is more from a HR perspective. So best practices generally, as Raymond shared, is like when you are looking at when an emergency arrives, most companies that have good standards or that have weathered through some of the disasters, usually what they do is they come together as they put together a team, like an emergency response. You can call them different names, but the function remains the same. They are the people who are putting together the war plan, basically. And this team usually has the CEO or the highest decision maker, so that the person is able to make decisions fast and also high risk decisions. And it will also have the functional heads, and in most cases, the support functions, which are the HR director, the communication director, or the security director, to be part of this. And there are variations of this, but then generally it's about and the functions of this team will be to make high impact decisions and to make immediate communication available to all the employees and also to the external stakeholders. So I want to share with you today the story of company A. I'm going to not name the company. It's a true story, but I won't name it because I will end up losing a friend if I do. So company A is a high-end manufacturing company. It's been in existence for decades, presence in Singapore over 3 decades. And they have a large presence in Singapore and also all over the country, all over the world. And they do much of their employees, 90% of them have to come into the factory or to the office to work, and only about 9 to 10% knowledge workers, I would say. So it's not an option to work from home. like how it is for most companies, maybe we're talking about knowledge workers are not necessarily more than 10 or 15%. The rest of them are people who need to come to their office to get work done. So this company, as usual, when this company has weathered through several emergencies, several disasters, and they have a very solid team in an emergency response team or a crisis management team in place, which comes together every time something happens, right? And so it did, like as usual, for the coronavirus epidemic. But what is different this time was that this epidemic required this team to do certain things that they haven't experienced before. And as you know, when you are put into a situation where it is an emergency, that's when you realize the best and the worst, right? You also realize the best things that are make the team take, but you also realize where your weakness is. So for this company to be successfully running, or at least to continue its business, employees need to come in. And for employees to come in, they need to have ample supplies of hand sanitizers and thermometers. Now, who buys thermometers? Who buys hand sanitizers? Is it the CEO? Is it the HR director, or the security person, or the comms director, or one of the functional heads? It's usually the procurement people. It's usually the administration who places the order. But the team that was put together for this particular incident did not make the decisions fast enough. By the time they made the decisions and they figured out where to get it from, how to get it from, or who was going to make the order, Singapore people went shopping. If you don't know, I see a lot of participants are not from Singapore. So we had a situation where many of us were preparing for the zombie apocalypse. So basically cleared off all the stocks and supplies in much of the department stores in Singapore. And also in some of our neighboring countries, I have to say we have in Singapore with a lot of tissue papers, toilet papers, and sanitizers who have really a lot of miles on them, more miles than me sometimes. So what happened by that time company A went to the market was they were greeted with empty shelves. Decision not made fast enough. But the employee, this didn't really stop their, it was not as bad as, okay, employees couldn't come in, because they still got the employees to come in, but they had to spend a lot more. They had to hire sanitizing agencies, cleaning agencies, instead of just buying sanitizers. So long story short, the moral of the story, what I'm trying to say here is you could have the best standards, you could have the best systems in place, but if your culture is not in the right place, if you don't have the right culture, then it will eat up your strategy. And I'm not sure how many of you the participants are from the HR background. Many people from the HR folks might have this experience. So when we start talking about culture, one of my earlier bosses used to say, "Do not fluff me," meaning it's a very intangible thing. It's not something that I'll be able to, a company culture is not something that we are able to define and deploy. It's something that comes up, like grows over a period of time. It can be grown intentionally, but for the most part, it is not very tangible. But frankly speaking, I don't want to get into that. I don't want you to just have that same reaction of, oh, culture means fluff, which means it can neither be measured, nor be implemented, nor be developed. So I'm going to share with you a research that the tech giant Google, Google, as you know, have like thousands of people working all across the world, right? And they spent about more than 2 years researching on a project that they call Project Aristotle. What they did was they had a mission. They wanted to find the most effective team, the best teams that give the most productivity. And across the globe, they chose 180 of their best teams, Google's best teams, and they put them under the microscope, basically studied them. And the results that they came up with was this. There are 5 points there. I'm reading out some aloud, like psychological safety. What even is that, right? You know, some of these things, when you're looking at it, meaning, impact, do you see anything that is easily measurable here? Do you see anything that is technical here? It's all related to culture. It is all related to things that you are, that are just intangible, not really tangible. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to talk a little more about the top one, psychological safety. What is it? Psychological safety is something where team members feel safe to take risks and be vulnerable in front of each other. Let's say in context to a team, this is what it means. This photo, I put it there because I just wanted to show you a contrast of what it is not. What you see here is people pointing at somebody who's obviously ashamed or embarrassed. So this exact opposite of what we're talking about here, like a sense of confidence. When in a team or in a company, an employee is feeling psychologically safe, what that means is they have a sense of confidence that the team that they belong to, that the company that they belong to will not ridicule them if they speak up. And they are also able to take some risks because they believe that. Now, when even this, so I've tried to delve a little deep in terms of culture, right? So even this might not sound too close to practical when it comes to, okay, so you're probably a HR practitioner, or you're probably a manager, or you're working in a company and have a team. So if you want to implement, implement is not the right term, but develop psychological safety in a team, what would you do? What are the things that you need? What are the skills that we are looking at? What is there like a list, a checklist of things, checklist of skills and competencies that you can focus on? I want to just show you a small list. Well, it's not really small, it's 8 in number, right? I filtered some of, there are 67 competencies in a model called Lominger competency model. It is a model that we use in talent development when we are looking at training people for a particular talents. I've just filtered 8 of them. Some of them I'll just read them out: approachability, composure, conflict management, directing others, interpersonal savvy, listening, managerial courage, motivating others. Now, this is just one view of looking at psychological safety, or for looking at culture. This is just, I've put together a view which I believe will be closer to ground, slightly more practical, and not just up in the air. So this model, if you are looking at it to say, okay, these are competencies which you can look at, which you can take and then put in your systems, in your current processes, to make sure that you're developing some of these characters in your teams, or some of these competencies in your team. And simple places where you can start with for developing these competencies, or to start focusing in competencies. I would say if you are starting if you're starting with this, you're probably not likely to start with all 8. You probably want to choose 1, 2, or 3, and then start focusing on just those. And an easy place to start with is, there are 2 easy places where you can do this. One is for your employees who are already in your company, where if you have a training budget and you spend some time training those people, start looking at what are the areas, what are the competencies that you want to train them in. For example, conflict management is one of the things that you see as as a company, as a team, you are lacking in, then try focus on that for the first quarter. And the second quarter, you can take up something like approachability and start working on that. And that is one area for the people who are already working for you, for your current employees. And the best place to apply this is actually in your hiring process. When you hire people, you are you have the luxury of choosing somebody, like, you go through, you let some people through into your company. Competency based interviews, just check even at the start of the process to see if you are hiring the people who have the right competencies or the potential of the competencies. So I'm at the end of my presentation. So even if you forget my story and all the stuff that I have shared with you all through, I just want you to take one thing away from this presentation. Company culture or your team culture is not necessarily fluff, and it can be worked through, and the desired culture can be achieved to get your teams to get ready for the next big disaster. Coronavirus is the disaster for the moment. It is not going to be the last. And don't wait until the next one to start building culture, because something like this will not easily come by. It's like growing a tree. And when your culture is not in place, you're not going to get a lot of success with whatever you do. So may the force be with you and your HR department and your managers to make this come true. Thank you.
Okay, guys, this is super awesome. Glad we don't have any more technical glitches, knock on wood. Culture, right? I mean, look in the room, look at this culture in the room. It's not just about, I mean, just like Alan said, it's not just about fighting the virus, right? If you have the right culture, you'll not just survive the virus, you'll survive extinction, and you'll have a competitive advantage over your competitors. And with this, let's look at the next session, and let's have Keith over. Hey, Keith. And I would say Keith is very much used to teaching, but he'll tell you everything about it.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. It's Keith Carter. I'm really glad to be able to talk with you. I wanted to just share with you about what does this mean, that this significant challenge, dismal economic impact of having a virus attack and really work disaster upon our supply chains, upon the way we live our normal lives, etc. And we've heard a couple of interesting topics here. We were able to hear about disaster recovery. We got to hear really insightful thoughts on the HR side, where we need to maybe be a bit more resilient and such as well. We need to ask ourselves some questions. Are we ready? And if not, how do we need to change? And we can't do this alone. I really liked Uli's slide right at the beginning. We have to stay connected, and that's the importance of the ecosystem. So I wanted to share with you today some thoughts on love, good deeds, and encouraging others. This is the fundamental aspect of life that we need to be involved with, because nothing else really matters. We just heard from Alan about the culture and such, and this is where if we can establish a culture of love, good deeds, and encouraging others, no matter what type of disaster comes along, we're going to be there to work together, whether at our office or across the world, like we are right now. And it's raining outside. People make excuses. Wow, I can't play, I can't work. But these people right on the screen didn't make any excuse. They said, we're gonna go out, we're gonna do our best on the rugby field. So how can we sit back and say, wow, there's a lion outside, there's a disaster, I can't possibly work anymore? Impossible. We can do this. And so we ended up doing a class that we should have gone up to Hanoi in Vietnam. And these folks joined us virtually, a class of 30 people. They are offline, right? All in a classroom. Myself and Shashank, who's also on this call today with us, here in Singapore, we were training them on Power BI and some other things. And you can see their faces, you can see the engagement. It's really possible to still do great education, but with a mixture of online and offline. What do we need to do? No matter what, there's ground truths. There's some key points. You know, watching a James Bond movie like 007, you know, he starts off on a chase going down a mountain and all the enemies are attacking, you know, or it's in a snow mountain and they're skiing across and snowmobiles are jumping over trees. It's a good movie, and it's always been good because you grab your audience. No matter how you want to teach or have a conference call or what have you, any format, any way, you have to start off with strong and meaningful points. Power of three. Humans are very funny. We learn ABC, 1, 2, 3. We're in the habit of just 3 things. That we can remember. Once we start to 4, 5, 6, 7, we forget even what the first was. So the 3 key points are critical. And then play on emotions. People remember their feelings much more than all the facts and information that comes across. I often am sad because after 3 hours of lecture, I know my students are only going to remember maybe 10% of what I say. Some of them are feverishly writing, others are feverishly WeChatting, but I know that no matter what, only 10%. And so I have to give them tests and assessments and projects to increase that retention. But I also try to make sure that we connect it with some personal or something that will drive their feelings. So let's look at this, summarizing what's the key point, looping back to the beginning, and then we have to ask the audience to work. I wish I could ask all of you to do some work today. Maybe I should, but we'll come to that later. George Bush, what is this? Why bring Jeb Bush, rather? Why bring him into the picture? I wanted to be able to share with you a little bit about what not to do. And because the US election is coming up soon, it's quite timely still because our dear friend, or however you might term him, is also involved in these debates with Jeb Bush. Uli, these slides are going to be available to them later,
Yes.
right? Okay, yes. Great. So I'm not sure how the fidelity is going to be on this. We'll try it out, but then no matter what, you'll have access to these slides and you can kind of hear what Jeb went through on the stage with another very dynamic person.
And you can't just tell Congress you're fired and go to commercial break.
Look, Jeb is a nice guy. He's a stiff, okay? He's a nice guy. He doesn't have a chance, all right? He ought to do what Walker did. Walker saw drop out. Oh, absolutely. He's no chance.
This is a tough business to run for
I know.
president.
You're a tough guy, Jeb.
And we need to have a leader that is
Real tough.
You're never going to be president of the United States by insulting your way to the
Let's see.
presidency.
I'm at 42 and you're at 3, so
Doesn't matter.
far I'm doing better.
Doesn't matter.
So far I'm doing better. You know, you started off over here, Jeb. You're moving over further and further. Pretty soon you're going to be off the end.
This is a real story here in New Hampshire. I can promise you the best way to show respect outside of rebuilding our military, two men and women uniform, is to fix that mess as fast as I can. That's it. Thank you. They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.
Governor, thank you very much for joining us today. I believe your schedule has a hard stop.
So here's my pledge to you. I will be a commander-in-chief that will have the back of the military. I won't trash talk. I won't be a divider-in-chief or an agitator-in-chief. I won't be out there blowhard, talking a big game without backing it up. I think the next president needs to be a lot quieter, but send a signal that we're prepared to act in the national security interests of this country to get back in the business of creating a more peaceful world. Please clap.
Okay, so don't ask your audience to say, please clap it, of course, as well. So this is being able to see what Jeb was trying to do. He was trying to make sure to get his audience connected, but he couldn't because you have to say whatever you want to with passion. Make sure it's as hot as possible. I share some of my 9 techniques in terms of public speaking. And when you bring it into even a web conference, you still need to do the same thing. As much as possible, these are the top 3 that I keep and focus on. There's more, but let's go past them for now. And finally, I want to wrap around with the key points of a presentation, starting strong, power of three, and playing on emotion. When you're doing this in this new environment, we need to be able to have a blend of online and offline where we can connect in the technology. And thanks to Uli and the whole Martians team for bringing this together, all of us in the room and all of you out there somewhere, and yet we can still communicate and collaborate together. You should connect with an ecosystem. A lot of banks and others are trying to create apps and tools on their own apps. This is not the way to go anymore. Just like with Zoom, don't try to make our own web conferencing tool. Let's glom on, use YouTube Live, LinkedIn Live, etc. Things that are already there, not creating our own user interface. And I'd be glad to talk with you more about what that means for your applications or your functions or systems that you're trying to put together. Don't create your own app. There's plenty of apps out there that are billions of users downloaded. How do you incorporate your functionality into those? And then go digital. Anything that requires someone to come in and manually do something anymore isn't appropriate at a time like this in these crises like right now. And we've seen 3 of them. Jakarta, floods, December. Manila, volcano, couldn't fly into Manila in January. And now you can't fly to major places in the world and it's February. Everything needs to be digital. When are you going to be a part of making that happen? And so let us consider how we spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together like this, as some are in the habit of doing, but rather encouraging one another. Love, good deeds, and encouraging others. Thanks everyone for listening. Hope you make a great time of encouraging others to do and get together and keep working during this time of crisis. Thanks again, Willie, for organizing.
Also, I have to catch comments. People, talking about presentation skills. They were saying the energy level just went up in the webcast.
So me now.
The second thing is, I got a second nervous when you were playing a YouTube video inside the YouTube stream.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. I was testing the live streaming on YouTube a few days ago in private mode. So it's not a listed video, right? So I was doing the webcam, sitting at home, YouTube live stream, not published, and I had the radio on. And a few minutes later, I get an email from YouTube, copyright infringement, your video is blocked. I said, what? I didn't even post a video. It was just a live stream. And AI and APIs, everything is connected. So they saw that I was playing some Radio Gaga song on the radio while I was only testing the webcast, and they would block the video.
Yep.
So I didn't want that to happen, but that's awesome.
Okay.
Yes, let's go to the next speaker.
Yes.
And this is the final speaker before we wrap up. We are almost on time, but that's awesome. So let's welcome Nicholas.
Hi,
Hi.
I have to up my voice. Okay, how do I go next though? Like, sorry, I'm obviously not a Zoom user.
No, this is
I'm a
just
chat.
Google Class.
So, okay, so
Yeah.
I'll just go next, right?
Yeah, this is.
Oh yeah, okay, so this is what I see.
So for the next 2 hours, Nicholas is going to.
Now I'm just gonna do it in 5 minutes. Thank you, Martian, for having me here. I don't know how Ernie found me.
You are now one yourself. Sorry, no chance.
No chance. I don't know how I was being found. And then they asked me if I wanted to come and share my experiences. In fact, when I saw the panel, and the panel was like so good, and what else can I actually add to it? So I think I'm gonna do stuff like how I always do, which is do it from the other side. Okay. So unlike all these people, if you can see me, I look different from them. They look like normal people. I obviously look like a reject in where we are. We are now at in the financial district of Singapore, one of the expensive rent buildings. I parked my car here. It was between taking Grab and parking is actually cheaper. But I was wondering what I can bring to this conversation. I think I'm not sure if I'm right, but you found me because of the COVID support group. Okay, then maybe I'll talk a bit about myself and why I think I'm here. Okay, so basically I'm a filmmaker. I also have a media website that talks about everything film in Singapore since 2006. It's called cinema.sg. Oh yeah, see my card is here. So I am so lazy to make slides because I'm more of a whiteboard person. And obviously you can ask me about storytelling, filmmaking techniques, and also how to break into the filmmaking industry if you are sick of your corporate jobs and you are always thinking about wanting to come into the glamour side, red carpets. I can assure you it's not like that. It's a lot of hard work. People don't see the sweat, but they see the red carpet in Oscars. But so what happened was, just like any other day, we were preparing for a shoot. And then the client called and say, look, we actually think we have to cancel the shoot because they didn't have any disaster management plan. It just went DORSCON orange, and then suddenly everybody was panicking. In fact, I had three classes to teach. I also teach filmmaking, by the way. And they just called and said, I'm sorry, we have to cancel the classes because management is worried about this contagion and stuff. So I was a bit shocked because it's sudden cancellations, and I think my first reaction was really to post on Facebook like anybody, like any normal person my age at the 40s. We are still on Facebook. If you are younger, you obviously do not know what Facebook is. Yeah, everyone's on Instagram. But so I posted something, and because I have friends who are working in civil service, and I actually said, guys, while you are cozy by the fireplace, if you don't mind, it's really cold outside where we are in the private sector. Appreciate if you can raise the situation with your bosses, and maybe they could take a look at our industry, because I basically belong to the media and arts industry. And later that night, my friend asked if she could post my Facebook post. It's funny, she didn't share the post. She took a screen capture on her phone of my post and wanted to post it as a photograph. So I said, okay, share it, it's fine. But she started telling me that a lot of her friends have gotten their job suddenly cancelled. So this was the day, which was just 2 Fridays ago. No, it was just 1 Friday ago, right? 2 Fridays ago. Yeah, week 2. Also, so tomorrow, the 2nd Friday. So we're it's about 10, 12, 13 days, 12 days before. So she was telling me that people are having their jobs being cancelled. So we said, okay, sounds like it's not a problem between just me and some other companies. So I said, okay, why don't I start a Facebook group? I put you in the group. You tell your friends, whoever are affected, come into the group. Let's have a conversation, because like we can't meet, right? We're not supposed to meet. So we just have to go online, digital. And because we are so used to doing a lot of stuff online these days, they got their friends, she got her friends in, and then suddenly, before you know it, today, we have about almost 1,300 members in the group, and the conversations have been incredible, because this is the very first time that we are seeing the media and the cultural industry coming together, and everybody sharing their experiences. And we got noticed, definitely, because I think that's where Ernie found us. And so I just got interviewed by Straits Times for 2 different sections, even Vice Media. They were asking questions like, why did you want to start this group, and what was the purpose? And I think the whole idea about us being in this brave new world is that coming from the filmmaking perspective, we work with a lot of people outside of our country. We could be working as writers or voiceover artists that's not in the same physical space, not even in the same country. And we have actually gotten very used to working and collaboratively internationally as well. Even payments are simple. You hire a voiceover artist on the website. It's a marketplace that we use. Yeah, Voice Money. They in turn do some reads. They send you some samples. You show to the client. The client says okay. You tell them okay. We use a credit card to pay for the fees. They see that the fees are being paid. They do the recording. They send the files. We say the files are okay. The site releases the money. This is the way we work these days. But of course, when it comes to physical production, it's not the same. But it also applies the same way for our post-production, where we could do the edits, send the files to the client takes a look, comment, feedback, comes back with the feedback, and then we do the re-edits. Like, we virtually don't want to have the clients in the office. And trust me, you will want that, because if the client is sitting beside you, the changes will be non-stop. So we are used to working this sort of parameters, and also because I started a Taiwan office, a branch office, well, a year and a half ago, and we started doing a lot of video conferencing. I can tell you that it's one thing for Asians to be on text mode. I feel that as an Asian person, not sure if this is appropriate, right? Asian person, but I think we are quite video shy, or maybe it's an age thing. So video conferencing is something that is very strange, but because we were forced to be in another country, we need to talk to teams. And bear in mind, we are not a corporate setup, right? So we do like 5 versus 4. And then suddenly everybody just got more used to the video side. And why is this important? This is important because if you were to join my Facebook group right now, if you are from the film or media industry, if you're interested, what happened was, starting from Tuesday, I started a series of live streams. Because so many people have so many things to say about their problems and their issues. So what we did was, or what I did was, I decided that since the mainstream news is not going to cover much about our industry, because we don't represent a huge chunk of the GDP numbers, it's not so much focused on us. I said, I think it's important for us to start talking about ourselves. And once upon a time, 25 years ago, I was a musician, independent musician, trying to be a rebel, just as I am now. Play music. Of course, parents would say, "Are you crazy? There's no future." Not only is there no future, they think like the press doesn't even care. I mean, we don't have a lot of coverage about local film or music or culture industry. So, which is why I started the website cinema.sg in 2006 to talk about fellow filmmakers. Fast forward today, 2020, I've started pretty much like a talk show that which invites guests from across the spectrum and sectors of filmmaking, creative and arts and culture to come and share their experiences. And in fact, last night, yesterday's stream, we actually had one of our nominated member of parliament, Ms. Audrey Wong. She was the very first one, join us, and she shared with us how 10 years ago she had pushed for freelancers to get recognized as a legit group of working people in Singapore. And she continued to say that there's a lot more that can be done. And with digital technology, collaboration, online idea sharing, Facebook groups, and people coming together to try to make a positive difference like the Martians and what we are doing now. And with you guys, I think the world is going to be a much better place because these technologies and tools already existed. I think I agree with what Keith had mentioned earlier. Too many companies have been trying to set up their own ecosystems. And when you have somewhat of a great technology section that can connect with the rest of the ecosystems, I think it can also really make the world a much better place. The whole idea of that Facebook page was try to solve my own problem with my friend and her friends and their friends. And before you know it, I now have more friends. They have more friends, and we no longer, or we realize that we are no longer so alone anymore. So we are now a strong group. We are now trying to push towards trade associations, memberships for people, independent freelancers to come to find their craft members. If you're a juggler, you find a juggler or a performer, and then you form some sort of groups. And because there's a whole business side in the arts and media freelance, obviously. All artists, all creatives just want to do their stuff. But there's also the whole interface with the rest of the world. the suits in Shenton Way. We're not on Wall Street, we are Shenton Way, Financial District. And I think with this technology, we are able to help each other learn a lot faster. So yeah, this is me. This is why I'm here. I hope you got a gist of what I'm trying to share with you. And if there's anything you want to know, especially how to break into the film industry, we're looking for mid-career switches, by the way, because it's a lot quicker to train people with certain skill sets and give them the know-how in certain particular craft areas. So if you're keen, just ask me anything. Okay, cool. Thank you. Anyway, before I leave, I need to do this on screen.
Oh,
speaking about corporate culture, I'm a big believer in HR. I forced myself to learn HR because we're a small country. Small entity, small company. We don't have a department. We don't have heads. I'm basically CEO, which means Chief Everything Officer. So talking about hand sanitizers, thank you for having that in the loop, because what I have here in the back is one of the first initiatives that we did, because we realized that although a lot of us have our jobs cancelled, right, a lot of us do have jobs going on, and they too, after the zombie apocalypse moment, couldn't find protection here, hand sanitizers and masks. I've been trying to create a care pack, right? So now I'll bring it up. Okay. So we actually went ahead to source for bulk sanitizers, and we made a little small one. So we basically have it available for our community for almost cost price. So a bottle like this is like about $1.50 Sing, which you cannot find this kind of price today. But we actually encourage people to bring their own bottle to refill for 80 cents, which is almost free. So these are, I have 6 here for all my fellow panelists.
wow.
So you take care of yourself.
Thank you so much.
Keep.
Wait, I'll break it up right away.
Yeah. Okay. And I have one extra just for Colin. Yes, thank you so much. Okay, so guys, don't forget that everyone can do a little small thing, and I hope you can use technology to that effect, to impact, to do good. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. Okay, guys, let's take a deep breath. In a moment, I want to try unmuting people. So for those on the Zoom call, if there should be somewhere a tab or something that says reactions, where you can raise your hand. And if you raise your hand, I'll try to pick one and unmute. If you don't feel like being on YouTube and being live streamed, that's fine too. We'll just take questions in the chat. And like we said, you can always ping us. Let's take a deep breath. You know, people always say, yeah, and you heard this a lot. You have to make mistakes. You have to fail fast. But what does it mean, right? So one of the questions that we had is, how did you guys meet each other, right? We started with the meetup physically, where some people come and they realize, oh, it's not for them because there is not much chit chat. It's actually about being productive together, right? And then some people emerge who are, well, actually, because we are not a commercial enterprise, we are a non-profit, we are a not-for-profit pro bono organization. And some people say, you know what, I want to help making this better, making this work. And that's one part. And the other part is, you know, when you say don't fail, what does it mean? It means also don't be afraid to ask. And I have that since some time. So this Raymond person over here, I think we met once a few days ago in the real world. And I reached out to him on LinkedIn and said, hey, dude, would you speak at our meetup? And he said, yeah, let's talk about it. And we made it work. So I reached out to others as well. And I can tell you, we are probably going to do this again. There is people who work for large banks, for large telcos on this island. I'm not mentioning the names, but you can make a guess. They are extremely busy right now preparing their business continuity plans. They didn't get clearance in time to make this on a short notice because, again, if I think back, I think Alan, we had this idea beginning of last week. We had our own conference call. Again, we are all in the same team, kind of coming up with a name, coming up with a theme, getting some bits together. So this is not something we planned months in advance. Couldn't anyway in this situation. right? And again, don't be afraid to ask, so that there is a big chance that somebody says, sorry, I'm busy, or this, I don't think this is for me. But yeah, you got to try. And this is probably one part of it, being open, creating an environment of trust, and just go with it. Right, so we just checking if anybody has raised their hands. I don't see that at the moment. But what we would like to do before we wrap up, Martians.sg, that's the URL you also see on the lower right, is basically your starting point for almost everything that we would like you to do, right? So again, we're not trying to sell you anything. We want to keep the people involved, engaged, create the community. So you've heard about the physical meetup. We want to do this again as things are slowly coming back to a normal situation. So we have one scheduled for next week. So if you want to meet Alan, Annie, myself, and maybe somebody else in the room who feels like joining, this is at a wonderful, cozy place in Tel Aviv. It's, I think, did we say that 26th is a Wednesday, I think, right? Or Thursday. Come to us, right? If you want to speak at the next online meetup, like this one, if you have an idea, get in touch. I've already had comments from people to say, you know what, this is actually quite bold. You are sitting in the room, you're speaking into a camera, you don't know who's listening. This is also the same story. And I know not everybody is up for that, but we can also help you to feel more comfortable and look at this room full of awesome people and the pizza and the hospitality that we have here. Meet us in the real world, talk to us, and the slides will be on the website as well. So for several people who have asked this already, Martians.sg is your landing page. Do we have anybody on the YouTube chat who wants to have a question? Do we have anybody on Zoom? Any of the participants who has a question? In the chat? No, that's awesome. Thanks everyone. We can keep this open for a few minutes. How do you guys feel? Yeah, we can. Oh, build me up, Buttercup, right? Yeah, but I mean, it's long as copyrighted. How did it feel for you, Alan? What was your? Come a little closer to the microphone, maybe. I didn't put it on surround sound, but how does it feel for you to be here and
Great. This is my first time talking to strangers. Usually when we do webinars, usually know who's on the other end.
Well, at least you can see their faces, right? And
yes,
you see
exactly.
the question marks on their foreheads.
Yes. So otherwise, when we are in bigger meetings or conferences, you can sense the language, the body language, and you say, maybe I need to change my pace, my tone, or whatever.
Yeah.
So no idea what happened.
Right.
So they're just talking. So it's good, but let's do this again.
Let's do this again. And again, it doesn't have to be the same panel. We'll have other interesting stories. At some point we want to, I mean, you did see my slide at the beginning about the tools, which are necessary. I mean, something like Zoom and being transparent, being open. So I probably do a quick talk on how do you run an online meetup. Yeah. Right. It's not just about, you obviously need Zoom and a few cameras and some microphones and some software, but it's not this only, right? How do you create awareness? I think one of the biggest things that we have is how do we reach our audience? So we are not trying to sell anything. We are a couple of cool kids who have a real story to tell, but how do we bring that to the world, right? And that's, how do we reach the audience? How do we keep them engaged? So if you guys see us out there and you sign up for the newsletter, then we can try to send that to you next time, but just stalk us on social media. We have a LinkedIn page. We have a YouTube channel at some point. Yes, and we'll be back. All right.
Awesome. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining.
Okay.